Hey everyone, this is GosuDad, and welcome to Game 15 of my run on the Blizzard online ladder, the 1v1 ladder. This is the game played directly after the previous game, duh. That was that drone rush, and you'll see some of my commenting down here with RaZe about the drone rush experience. Now, as you know, the game of StarCraft, a lot of it is a mental game. Understanding, keeping your cool, understanding the game, keeping your cool, and of course communicating with a player. And this guy apparently being a pretty good-natured guy, give me good luck, have fun with the heart. I think this communication at the beginning of the game actually did throw us off a little bit. You'll see a little bit later, mentioning that drone rush, and what that did for him, as we'll see later on in the game, is he thought that I was requesting that he does not do an early strategy against me, and that was not my intention whatsoever. Maybe I can catch him online and do some kind of a rematch. I did try to message him after the game, and he was like, dude, don't chat to me while I'm playing. So I was like, well, I've turned on the switch so that when you're in game you don't see chat messages, but apparently he does not. But yeah, see, you won, right? Well, so don't, go, if you haven't seen my previous video, go back, watch that video, the drone rush video I played against Wild, and you can learn from my mistakes at my third loss against drone rush. And that's something that I would like to comment about StarCraft 2, playing on the ladder in practice and getting better at StarCraft 2, is that the ladder in many ways is very poor way to practice, because every game that you play, you're playing against, you essentially have to prepare for anything, because you can encounter anything on the ladder, especially down at the bronze level, and I do really feel for people down at the bronze level. I feel for myself, I suppose. Because you can encounter anything. You can encounter a player going for a macro build, you can encounter players that are just drone rushing, you can encounter players like myself that have timings that are completely external to the game. I've noticed, especially with this game as well, this was another game played while I'm kind of just waiting for my daughter to wake up and we can get the kids rolling in the afternoon. My timings are completely external to the game. It has nothing to do with, do I push out now? Would I win with this push? Etc. It's like, oh, it's time to go send everything to attack. And that, all in all, that ends up making, excuse me, that ends up making the Blizzard Online ladder not a very good practice tool. And the reason for that is that when you're practicing, you're trying to get better at something, you want repetition. You want to be able to play the same thing over and over, refining some aspect of the game. And when you're playing on the ladder, you're not playing against the same thing every time. You're playing against completely random skill level, well, not completely random, but you're playing against a variety of skill levels. You have no communication, with your opponent as well. And I mean, there's, like, in this case I was communicating there, but it's not the same as what I did with Commander Talon. If you read my blog, GosuDad.blogspot.com, I had a post a while back where I was literally practicing with Commander Talon. We were doing the same, I was doing the same build 4 times in a row, the 4-gate, and he was practicing to defend against it, and that is the right way to practice and to learn and to get things better. Playing on the ladder, you can learn a lot, which is what most of my games have been played on the ladder, and there's so much you can learn just from your own play. And in that regard, there is a lot you can learn from the ladder about yourself. You're basically saying, instead of playing against the AI, I'm going to play against random people on the ladder. So here we go in this game. So he's thinking he's going to go for some kind of more longer term strategy. Now what's interesting, if you've been watching all of these production queues, we have been fairly busy with the production queues, looking at the worker supply. We're actually tight on worker supply. Now my army supply is much higher, and you may be asking, well, what's the difference? Why is my army supply higher? And I think we can look here at the resource count. He's already banked up 200, and he's been keeping pretty good on using up his minerals, but he's starting to bank them up, and part of that is that some of these buildings aren't busy quite right away. I think this reactor was just built, but he's really focusing on building buildings. Now, what I think is funny is, at the end of the game, I was accused of cheesing, which, as you can probably tell, I felt kind of bad about that. So what cheese? What's going on here? And of course, compared to drone rushing, this is not cheesy at all. And in fact, if you look at our two builds, we both have very similar building structures. He's going for triple barracks, double reactor, so a lot of strong stuff there. He's got, interestingly enough, he has this factory kind of pulled off to the left with a starport. I'm not sure if that's to kind of hide them from being scanned. Although it looks like, oh, okay, he's just going to switch around some buildings here. So we actually have a fairly similar build. Two barracks over here, an empty, a naked factory here pumping out Banshees, and, sorry, not Banshees, Hellions. And of course, building the Banshees as usual. Now I've been trying to stay up from being supply blocked, and you can see that's been working out quite nicely. My supply is pretty high. I've been trying to also keep up with building workers constantly. But you'll notice a little bit earlier in the game I was supply blocked, but even with that supply block I've been keeping up with my opponent, and now my army supply is much higher. Now I'm not quite sure why that is. I haven't seen him expand yet, so as far as a player trying to go for a little bit longer game, I haven't seen an expand. He's on a significantly lower supply, but he should be able to catch up with all of these buildings, building things right away. He should be able to build quite a bit. Now here's the interesting point. The minute is 8 minutes 43 seconds. I'm doing a big move out, a couple of Banshees, and let's just pause real quick and rewind just a little bit. I want to see how much I have. It's easier to do that when everything's all together on the same screen. Okay, so we've got 2 Banshees. It looks like 22 Marines, 4 Hellions. Looking back at the units tab, let's compare this. So, wow. Okay, so I'm actually ahead in the worker count. He only has 1 medevac. That's interesting. Is there another one? There's no one almost out on the way. But yeah, that's actually a pretty significant discrepancy in that army supply, 21 to 36 in total. But of course, these 2 Marines out here, they're going to get killed by my forces moving in. So I don't know. My claim in the chat was that I moved out at 60 supply, or at 60 plus supply, and that's about where I was at, about 60. Of course, that claim was all based just purely on memory. In one of my previous games, I noticed that my Hellions were getting far ahead of the army, so that's where you see them pulling back there. I'm going to have them come out and scout and see if he's expanded. So, one of the things that I want to change about this Banshee build is that I want to come out, and I did see this drop coming across the way, and I don't know if I'll end up focusing on it, but I did take an SCV and went over here and was like, build a missile turret, but of course I had not built an engineering base, so that was bad on my part. Could be building stuff out of these buildings. That's interesting. Wonder why I didn't do that. Okay, so seeing these medevacs going up, and it'd be interesting to see where my focus was. So here I am, just coming up to the ramp, seeing what's there. Not seeing very much. That's quite a surprise. Here comes a tank. I don't know if we can be focusing on that. Okay, did you see that? That flutter of activity down here was to say build stuff back at the base. A lot of that having to do with hotkeys. Oh, wait. Never mind. I was not on the right viewing thing. Let's back that up just a little bit. So one of the key things as we're learning how to play this game is, and we'll slow down the speed a little bit, is multitasking and being able to macro while you're moving forward, and a lot of that is tied to hotkeys. So at this point, you can see my mouse selection was going all the way back to, I was selecting my units in the army, but my buildings back here are on hotkeys. I just think the barracks are, and the command center. Now, if I was better about it, all of my unit producing structures would be on hotkeys. Like in this case right here, I don't need to stand here and attack. I don't need to watch my units attacking things, right? I need to be telling my units where to go and then, move my attention somewhere else. At this point, I know that that drop is coming towards my base. I'm surprised I haven't tried to move back towards it at this time. Now, zipping back over here to the SCVs are under attack, and we can see that it was very good that I was starting to build some of these units. And actually, that's an interesting point. I believe, I am so curious about how this went off. Earlier on, maybe it was before back when I saw that drop, I changed the rally points. Okay, let's hit play now. Maybe, actually, I think it was back before that. It was back when these Hellions, when I first saw the drop. I changed the rally points of the of my unit producing structures. I had a couple of them set to individual units in the field, so that was the idea, that I would build units and they would come out to I would build units and they would join the army up at the front. Now I did see those 2 medevacs leave. I don't know how much was inside them, how loaded up they were, but you can see I'm still deciding to focus on this front battle. It will take them some time to get to my base, and moving my units up here. Okay, so here you can see I'm changing the rally points to be inside my base. Now that's a very important point. It's going to take his units some time to get to the base, and oh, you can see they're trying to build an engineering bay. That's, by the way, that's far too late of a moment to build an engineering bay. His units will definitely get there before I can finish an engineering bay and build a missile turret. So, so again, back to that note about the micro and the macro. You know, my point here is that I don't need to be watching this group of army units in the base, right? I mean, I did kind of want to micro them a little bit to make sure that they didn't get totally overwhelmed, but I don't need to do that. I could have been focused back here, making sure that I was continuing to build units, because you notice some of these buildings are idle. I really could have kept that up. Now that Banshee turned out was very handy, and now bringing in all these SCVs to attack. Now, ooh, look at the Marines. They're actually not attacking. It looks like they were told to move to a certain place, and now they're just running around. So that explains that encounter. You know, actually, as much as I attacked with the SCVs, I really didn't expect them to hold off that attack as well as it did, and I think that's an example of, okay, now he's able to move those away. See, I have no anti-air back here. I think they started building a Viking and a couple of Marines trying to trying to make it out the front door. So, and that's interesting too. These Marines didn't really get involved in that fight. We'll have to take a look back at that at some other point. So, I mean, at this point, the game's over. Let's go ahead and pause, and we'll rewind it a little bit just to see exactly what happened there. Now, even though our armies kind of did a pass through in the night, 2 ships sailing past each other in the night, I would really like to take a look at this drop into my main. I mean, coming into the front, he basically had an undefended base, so I'm not going to sit down and try to analyze that or whatever. But let's take a look at this drop. So, coming into this base, like I said, I had 1 Banshee that finished, a Hellion on the way, a couple of Marines being built, but of course they're being built and sent up here at the front instead of being back inside the base. And you know, unless I'm going to pull up the supply depot, which look, I did do that. That was kind of silly. It's better for my defensive units to be back here with the money. All the money is with the SCVs. And so that Marine, this Hellion, were involved in the fight. Okay, here I said I was so interested in looking at this, and let's back this up just one little bit. Watch as these units come in, turn on the hit point tab. So he's got 12 Marines and a tank. That's actually pretty good. 12 Marines should be able to take out this Banshee lickety split and be able to kill a bunch of SCVs. Surprised the tank doesn't siege yet, but it doesn't need to because there's basically nothing here. Now this Banshee doing a pretty good job. I didn't see how many kills he had, but okay, as these guys are coming into the SCVs, so it looked like he lost 2 Marines in that fight, and the tank is fairly healthy, so wow. So he basically didn't lose anything there. I lost a Banshee, a Hellion, and a Marine. I have a couple more things being built. A Banshee, another Banshee coming out of here. But this is where I think the battle gets kind of interesting, is that we have basically the SCVs, which there's 22 here, must be including the ones inside mining out of the refineries as well, against 10 Marines and a tank. A tank with siege mode, by the way. So at this point, he can do a ton of damage purely with the Marines. Each round of fire from these Marines, I think is it 5 or 6? 7 damage because he got an upgrade. So 7 damage. So they're pretty strong, a high rate of fire, and of course you've got the medevacs to heal them, and the tank can go into siege mode. So at this point, I don't I don't think the SCVs, excuse me, boy, morning casting, got the frog in the throat, don't really have much of a chance here. But watching, oh, that's it right there. That's the difference. So you'll notice that the Marines have just started attacking now. There was a large amount of time where the Marines were not attacking. Apparently they were sent in on some kind of move attack. Now you see here, see, when they're back firing together, they can do a ton of damage, especially if they only attack a couple of SCVs at a time. But they were apparently told to move into the units instead of attacking into them, and that happens to me all the time. I want to move my Marines closer and then attack, and I end up not switching to that attack mode soon enough. See, here they go to move, and then they're still on move. And then while they're on move, they're still on move here, and then finally changing to attack. So during all of that time, they were taking damage from the SCVs, and not only that, but you'll notice that the siege tank went into siege mode. I think that may have been a mistake, because when they went into siege, when the tank goes into siege mode, it does cause, I believe it does cause friendly fire damage. And so these units, these poor Marines, were at a pretty good army advantage. And they ended up, you know, being told, don't attack, just move in this one place. And so they weren't attacking, and in addition to that, the tank was, their own tank was firing on them. So, wow, that's pretty interesting. Now, as a note there to fellow Terrible Bronze players like myself, that encounter could have been completely different if I looked at that group and said, there is no way that I can hold that off. And down here at the bronze level, you know, we're all making mistakes back and forth. And so even in a situation like that where you're thinking, okay, well, logically, he is just going to stomp all over these SCVs, there is that chance that if your decision-making is slightly better than your opponent, that you can come out ahead in a disadvantageous situation. And that's, you know, in some ways, it's actually kind of a disadvantage of being in bronze, is that in a normal game, you would just quit because you're like, there's no way that I could win. But in bronze, you have that sliver of a hope that your opponent will make worser mistakes than you're making, I guess, and pull it out. So, good game for RaZe. I did tell him afterwards that, like, oh, I do this casting thing, and then he's like, stop talking to me in the game. I'm like, so here I am casting this game for RaZe. There you go. There's that game. And yeah, now don't forget the ladder is locking in a couple of days, and I will be trying to play at least a few more ladder games. I don't think I'm going to get promoted to silver before the ladder lock. But yeah, get in your games, start playing StarCraft 2, get on that ladder, and of course, even after the ladder locks this upcoming Tuesday, you'll still have another week to use up your bonus pool and get as high as you can in your division within your league. And of course, usually that means that's when I play most of my games, is after the ladder lock. But we'll see how that goes. GosuDad signing off, and we'll see you guys later.